Now, board games have a sort of iterations. So, mechanics from here, we'll theme it this way, or we'll take from here and here, come up with a new game, sort of, Tarantino-esque movie making type thing, where you're taking, having a new thing. But they also will literally do remakes and redesigns, often by the same designer. Maybe the theme is a bit dated, there's licensing issues, they want to work on some rules again, and they'll re-release the game, often in a second edition, but sometimes they'll change it enough that it is a new release. I'm here to talk to Shane about a couple of those sort of games. Shane, how are you going?
Not too bad yourself, Liam.
Not too bad. Now, you talk about this as almost feels like patches in a video game.
Well, I mean, depending on how you look at it, depending how far the redesign gets into as a redesign, it's either changing the core aspects of the game to make things, better, which that's probably a sequel. That's probably, something that you're either doing as a full re-release of the game or something like that. Or are you just going, here's the core concepts, here's the one or two pieces of those core concepts that just either didn't work or could be, redesigned to be made better. And that's like a patch for me. That's kind of like a, just something on top.
And sometimes the changes are for better or worse, just in general. We've got two examples here. The first is looking at Battlestar Galactica, which is a classic board game. There's an element of social deduction, but it's more of a big, heavy survival game where you might have some traders. It's a licensed game. Obviously, now that the show's a little bit older, licenses run out. Trying to do a second edition of that would mean getting all the licenses to agree. Ain't got time for that, so they've re-released it as Unfathomable, same designer, but they've changed the theme to Arkham Horror, Cthulhu-esque stuff. How did you find both games?
Maybe it's kind of like I enjoy sci-fi more than Cthulhu horror kind of stuff, but I just felt like Battlestar had even though it was even is the version 1, it sometimes just felt a little bit tighter in some aspects. Like it was that kind of just that theme of the theme of the actual whole show is that kind of the secret trader kind of aspect, and that hit it really well.
Yeah, who is the Cylons? It's also there's a lot of game behind it that you could play this cooperative and it would still be like 100% cooperative. It would still be a very hard, both of them, and it would still be a hard, interesting game. Which if you take out Hidden Traders in a lot of construction games, there's nothing left.
Yeah.
I agree that the theme fits perfectly and really enhances the game. Arkham Horror, that theme doesn't hit as hard. They did change some focuses as well with the game, where this is, once you're revealed as a Cylon, you kind of have some things to do. Where the second game, you're really encouraged to stay hidden for longer.
Yeah.
So they've managed to sort of go back and make some changes. The difference is, you can buy this at a store. Battlestar, you have to hunt it down, and it's now expensive. And I've got a beat-up copy that still was too much. Another game, which is not about licensing that they've redone, is Wingspan and Wyrmspan, which is going from birds to dragons. We've just played Wyrmspan for the first time. What do you think?
I think, in reality, these two games are so similar to each other that you are kind of playing the same game, except maybe just neater, I would say. Like, there are a few core concepts that Wyrmspan do that just, is just a more streamlined, like, this is how you build your engine, this is how you're going for your victory points. Like, me and you, even in the game we played, I was going for much higher, victory points, just base cards, and the actual, reward systems of the card itself, whereas you were going for the build-up beneath, stack your cards.
Yep.
So that kind of ways just to gain the victory points at the end was just much more neater in Wyrmspan than Wingspan. But that said, it's a very, very similar game comparatively.
Yeah, I think both of these examples, if you know how to play one, you're going to be able to figure out the other one pretty quickly. So these two do have differences in how they play, but they just feel very similar in terms of the structure and what sort of you're doing. And there's definitely some differences. And I think as a base game, I like Wyrmspan more. I play Wingspan with Oceania, which I like a lot. And it also depends on the theme.
Yeah.
But I think if you're just going to get one and you don't mind dragons, I would recommend getting the new one.
That said, like, if you are getting for just art, like, everyone loved Wingspan for its art. Wyrmspan doesn't disappoint in that either.
Yeah, I guess it's also if you're going. A lot of people like dragons, but a lot of people who are maybe not into games as much might be like, "Oh, it's a fantasy thing. I don't really want to do that." Whereas
True.
like, "Oh yeah, I'm happy to play it." Oh, it's a
Yeah, it
board
goes
game,
both ways. Yeah.
So there's that. I think if you're talking about sort of reiterations of games, we can't not talk about Rana Knizia, who's I don't know. I probably should do a couple of games of his. He's released 700 games, and if you didn't count the game when he's just replaying the same game, it's probably closer to about 250, 300, which is still a lot of games. But he's very famous for like, what if we tweaked it, or what if we changed the theme, or what if instead of, how would the game change, instead of doing square tiles, we do hex tiles that then change the placement mechanics just enough to be like, oh, this has a different twist. And it's sort of, that's...
Well, it is the juggle of how far do you do the redesign. If you know that there is something that works really well, that everyone really enjoys, how far do you tweak it to actually kind of either go, you know, this is still the same kind of enjoyment, but something slightly different. And I think Wyrmspan really, really does that fairly well. Like, it is a lot of the core same concepts of Wingspan. You know, your 3 nests, you know, your 3 caves. You've got now caves that you actually...
Yeah, 3 environments.
Yeah, environments. So it's still a lot of that core, you know, core concept there comparative to, I'd say, Unfathomable, where you're kind of going like just a whole different change of play style when you're the trader comparative to, you know, Battlestar.
Yeah.
So it changes a lot of that core mindset of the player, I'd say, comparative to this, where it's in the end it's still just a, you know, collect a card.
Yeah, well, I guess the benefit of this is that they're not out of print, either of them, and Wingspan is definitely never going out of print, ever.
Yeah.
Is that you can pick which one you theme more. There's a bunch of other games where the older game has gone out of print. It is harder or more expensive to track down. Sometimes the themes are quite dated. Chinatown's an example of that, where they go, well, let's refresh the theme.
Yeah.
And they can, you know, update sensibilities and also just modernize rules sometimes.
True.
This is one of the things where if something goes out of print, you probably don't have to wait too long before they re-release it eventually.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, you know, once you get the good thing right, you will most likely keep going with it.